Hello everyone, my name is Rachel. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am here to bring you guys my mid-September reading wrap-up. I have 21 books to talk about in this wrap-up. Let's just go ahead and jump right on into it. So the first book that I read in the month of September was Mafia Darling by Mila Fanelli. This is book 2 in her Kings of Italy series. This is also the sequel to Mafia Mistress, which was the first part of Fausto and Francesca's romance. This is basically a pretty bonkers mafia romance between the two of them, and what's really cool is that Fausto is a mafia boss and it takes place in Italy. Most mafia romances that I've read take place in the States, and so that is really refreshing for sure. I really don't have much to say about like the conclusion of their story. I do think Mafia Mistress, which was book 1, like I said, was a bit more entertaining. I was a bit more invested in the story. This one was still very solid though. I gave it 4 stars. I am very much looking forward to reading Mafia Madmen, which is the next book in the series, and that is going to follow a completely different couple that I am really excited about. So next up, we have volume 3 of Takani and Hana. It's a little bit of a weird premise, but we have Takani and Hana, and in the first volume, there is an arranged marriage meeting that has been arranged by Takani's grandfather and Hana's father, but originally Hana's older sister was supposed to meet up with Takani, but she flaked out, and so Hana had no choice but to kind of disguise herself as her older sister and go to this meeting, but Takani recognizes who she really is pretty much right away, and things go on from there. This is basically about their somewhat weird friendship. There's definitely nothing romantic going on between the two of them at the moment. Takani is 26 and Hana is 16, and there are also 18 volumes of this series and it is complete. So I'm hoping that the romance won't kick in until Hana is 18, and I'm sure that is how it plays out because this is a pretty popular series among romance manga readers from what I understand. So yeah, I mean, I'm just having a good time. I still think volume 1 was my favorite installment of the series so far, but I did give this installment 4 stars. Then we have Dirty Rocker by Cassie Mint. My really good bookish friend Samantha from Books with Samantha messaged me to read this novella specifically because we are both huge fans of Cassie Mint. And so she had read this recently and she was like, Rachel, I really think you're gonna love this one specifically. Please just go ahead and read it ASAP. And so I did. This is on Kindle Unlimited, by the way. So is Mafia Darling. All of Mila Fanelli's books are on Kindle Unlimited as well. So this is a rock star romance, as you can tell. We have our heroine, London, and she just recently found out that her real biological father is a pretty famous rock star. He's in this rock band, and so she writes to him and ends up going on tour with him and the band for a few months. And so this is the romance between her and Dex, who is her father's bandmate and best friend. There is an age gap. Dex, I think he might be in his late 30s, maybe early 40s, I'm not really sure. And then London, I think, is around 2021, something like that. And yeah, this is just a really great friends to lovers kind of romance. Cassie Mint does friends to lovers so well. This isn't my absolute favorite Cassie Mint novella. I feel like I didn't emotionally attach to these characters quite as much as I have with some of her other characters in the past. But this was still really solid if you are looking for a rock star romance novella. I mean, look no further. I had a really fun time with this one. Next up, we have Little Slice of Hell by Cleo Evans. This is book 1 in her Creature Cafe series. This is a monster romance novella series that has a very interesting premise, very unique. So we are centering around this cafe, and the owner of the cafe is a matchmaker. He specifically makes matches between monsters and humans. And so the main characters of this novella, we have Peter, who is a human, and then we have Dante, who is a demon. Specifically, he's an incubus. He literally has red skin, he has a tail, yeah, like the whole 9 yards. And so from the second that Dante and Peter meet, they have this insane chemistry, and Dante knows it's because they're mates, but Peter doesn't really understand that. And so things just go on from there. I do want to point out with this novella, there was some very rough sex at some points. I mean, some of it was like a bit much for me. Some of the kinks involved were like a bit much for me, but I can't deny that I was entertained the whole time. I really liked these two main characters. I really enjoy the world this takes place in. I love the premise and the idea behind this creature cafe. I think there's at least 10 novellas in this series, and I'm definitely going to read more for sure. And yeah, I really enjoyed the author's writing as well. Next up, we have volume 3 of Spy Family, one of my new top favorite manga series for sure. And I'm very happy to report that I did give this volume 5 stars. Volume 1 I gave 4 stars, volume 2 4.5 stars, and we finally have a 5-star volume here, which I'm very excited about. I just love this series with my whole heart, and just the story of this volume in particular, and the pacing was really great. I just loved it so much. But I talked about this series a lot in a recent reading vlog I did. I'll definitely link that up in the cards above, where I tried out 5 very popular manga and anime series and discussed them with you all. So I'll definitely just link that video up there, because I discussed Spies Family for like at least 10 minutes, because I could go on and on about how much I love this series. But basically, we have Twilight, who is a spy. This is taking place during, I would say, the 1960s, during a Cold War. Then we have Yor, who he ends up having a marriage of convenience with. She secretly is an assassin. And then we have Anya, who Twilight adopts at pretty much the very beginning of volume 1, but she's secretly a telepath, and so the 3 of them are keeping these secrets from each other. But there's also just this adorable found family aspect, and it's everything. There's action, there's inklings of romance. Like, there's truly just something for everyone. I need to stop myself, because I will talk about this series forever and ever. But next up, we have Yakuza Lover. I read volumes, let me think about this, 2 and 3 so far this month. Y'all, I am complete trash for this series. I did not expect to love this series as much as I do. This is basically a Yakuza romance. We have Oya, who is like a Yakuza boss, basically. And then we have Yuri, who is just like a normal college student. And pretty much from the moment they meet, they fall in love and they start dating. This is definitely an age gap. I think Oya is probably in his like mid-30s and Yuri, I think, is 20. And this is very, very smutty, I am happy to report. And it's just like a really sweet and sexy romance between these two. I love how they clearly communicate with each other. I love that they both are equally invested in their relationship, and I love the outside drama that comes into play and kind of gets in their way a little bit here and there. Like, it's just a very addictive and fast-paced series. Next up, we have one of my favorite reads of the month so far. That is Up All Night with a Good Duke by Amy Rose Bennett. So I had never read anything by this author before, but now I definitely will, and I am so excited for this series to continue. This is only book 1 of the series, of the Byronic book club series, but this is a historical gothic kind of romance going on. But this is about Artemis. She is a finishing school teacher by day and a gothic romance writer by night, which I just love that so much, because there were so many amazing conversations surrounding the romance genre in general, especially in this time period. I believe this takes place around the 1840s, 1850s, so it's just really interesting to read about the romance genre in this historical context. And then we have Dominic, who is the reclusive, widowed Duke of Dartmoor, and everybody in society believes that he killed his wife. So like nobody likes him basically, and he's also struggling to raise his 15-year-old daughter Celeste. And so basically Artemis and Dominic randomly meet in a bookshop and things go on from there. I just loved this romance so much, and I especially enjoy single parent romances when they're in a historical setting. I don't know why that trope works better for me in this kind of setting, but it just does. And I loved that Dominic meeting Artemis made him come out of his shell, and he's actually very teasing and flirtatious with her, and this was just great. This was just amazing. I thought it was paced really well. Like I said, there is a gothic vibe to this that I really loved, that I feel like would make this a perfect historical romance to read during this time of year, during spooky season. So yeah, I couldn't help but give this 5 stars. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. Next up, I do have some manga volumes here that I read as a part of that reading blog I was telling you guys about, where I tried out 5 popular manga series. So 2 of them I started in August, and these 3 I read in September. So I'll just quickly go over the ones that I read and my thoughts. But basically we have, this is a collector's edition of Fruits Basket. So this is volumes 1 and 2 of the manga series. And this is just an adorable 90s YA romancy type series with a light fantasy element involving the Chinese zodiac signs. Basically we have Toru, our main character. She ends up living with the Soma family, who they have basically been cursed by the Chinese zodiac signs. Like, each family member is possessed by a different animal spirit, and so if they are embraced by a member of the opposite sex, they will just spontaneously turn into their animal spirit, basically. And this was just adorable. Like, nothing to write home about for me personally, but I can understand why it's so popular, and the 2019 anime adaptation is really well done as well. And then I read volume 1 of the Black edition of Death Note. So this is volumes 1 and 2. I'm obsessed with these Black editions because it's just, it fits the aesthetic of the series so well. But I absolutely loved volumes 1 and 2. I gave them 5 stars. I'm already obsessed with this series. If you know nothing about this, this follows Light, our main character. He comes across this notebook that is a death note. If you write someone's name in that notebook and you have a clear image in your mind of who that person is, they will die in 40 seconds. And if you don't specify the method of death, they will just die from a heart attack. And so it's following the journey of Light with this notebook and all of the messed up things that he's doing with this notebook, basically. And it's just so well done. If you have never checked out this series, but you're a fan of like mystery thriller, like fast-paced novels, I think that you'll really enjoy this series. And then last but not least for that vlog, I did check out Fullmetal Alchemist. Specifically, this is the omnibus of volumes 1, 2, and 3. My new manga obsession, my god. And the anime series, specifically I watched the first few episodes of Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. That anime series is fantastic as well. But we are following Edward Elric and Alphonse Elric. They are alchemists. When they were young children, their mother passed away and they were desperately trying to find a way to bring her back. So they tried using alchemy to make that happen, but that is like the #1 rule of alchemy, that you don't try to transmute humans in any way or mess with humans in any way. And so that goes horribly wrong to the point where Alphonse literally loses his body, Edward loses his leg, and he gives up one of his arms in order to bind Alphonse's soul to a suit of armor. And so now it's just their adventures. They're trying to find a way to get their original bodies back. And yeah, this is absolutely incredible, amazing, like just an amazing story. I think there's something in it for everyone. I'm obsessed with the Elric brothers and their relationship with each other. Like, truly one of the best sibling relationships I've ever read about or watched. Like, it's just, it's amazing. Amazing characters. Like, again, I could talk about this series for years and I need to stop myself. All right, we have a lot of manga so far this month. So next up, I want to talk about volume 1 of Something's Wrong with Us. So this is absolutely the manga series that I would recommend to you if you love dark romance. That's absolutely what this is. This also has a vibe of like mystery thriller going on, but basically we have our hero and heroine. When they were kids, they were very close. The heroine's mother worked for the hero's family's bakery or like dumpling shop, something like that. And so what happens is that the hero's father ends up being murdered, and the hero, again, they're kids, he says that the heroine's mother killed his dad. And so the heroine's mom goes to prison, and I think she died in prison. I can't quite remember. And so now it's years later, and now they're back in each other's lives basically. And it's bonkers so far. Like it's a wild time, and it gets further complicated because the hero doesn't know who the heroine actually is, because she's using kind of a fake name, I think, or like a different last name, and she looks different obviously than how she looked from childhood. And so there's a lot happening already. Kind of confused, but also very intrigued. I feel like this is a series that I absolutely just need to read volume 2. I need to continue because I'm very interested, but I'm also just like, what is this? What is happening? Next I read volume 1 of Blood on the Tracks. Speaking of manga series that is just like bonkers and wild, but this is more of like a psychological thriller between our main characters, our mother and son. And this first volume is mainly like all rainbows and sunshine. The mother and son are very close to each other. We're seeing that the mother is very overprotective of the son, and then by the end of this volume you see the mother do something really fucked up in order to stay close to her son basically, and that's all there is to it. Like there's really not much text in this series from what I understand, so you'll like blow through this first volume for sure. And I did find it intriguing, but like I just don't care enough about the story to continue. Sorry, not sorry. So I gave this 3 stars, but I do think if you're a fan of like horror kind of manga or thriller types of manga, like I think this would be a good one for you to go for. Like I know a lot of people that I follow that read this series are absolutely obsessed with it. And then also I did give volume 1 of Something's Wrong with Us 4 stars. Next up we have Garlic and the Witch by Bree Paulson. This is the follow-up to Garlic and the Vampire, which was a graphic novel that I read a month or 2 ago. And yeah, this is just a continuation of the story basically. We are following Garlic, as you can see on the cover. She is like a vegetable person, right? And so she has a bunch of other friends that are like different kinds of vegetable people. So in this second novel, we're finding out more about how the witch that is kind of their mother basically created them and gave them life. And Garlic is now on a quest to go get some magical supplies for the witch that is her mother. And there's other things going on plot-wise that are kind of spoilery, so I'm not going to say anything, but I gave this 4 stars. I didn't enjoy it quite as much as Garlic and the Vampire. I don't know. The plot was a bit too weird for me. Like, it was odd. Like, I get what the author was going for, but I'm also just like, why? I don't know. But it was still adorable, still really wholesome. I think this is a really great little graphic novel series to read for this time of year because it just has like all the cozy fall vibes. Then next up we have Beautifully Broken Control by Catherine Cowles. This is book 4 in her Sutter Lake series. This is a small town romance series that I have been slowly working my way through. This one I was the most excited for just because I have quite a few friends that have read this entire series and they all agree that this is the best book of the series. So I really thought I was going to love it and give it 5 stars. I think I gave it like 4.5 stars. Like it was close to a 5-star, but it wasn't quite there for me personally. But this one centers around Kennedy. She has been living in Sutter Lake, the small town that this series centers around, for the past couple of years. Basically at the very beginning of the novel, we see that she was born into a very rich and wealthy family, but her father was essentially embezzling money from his very poor clients. Through that, things happen. She kind of has no choice but to leave her life behind and start over in Sutter Lake. Then we have Kane, who also has a traumatic past going on, and he is now like a billionaire though, and he owns this very successful security company. And so he is a friend of one of the families that this series centers around, and so he finds himself taking a vacation in Sutter Lake, and so Kane and Kennedy meet. But one of the things I really enjoyed about this story is that both the hero and the heroine are so guarded against falling for someone for very good but very different reasons. And so I loved seeing the two of them work through their trauma and break down each other's walls. And also, just like with the other books in this series, this does have a really great suspenseful element going on that I thought was very well done. So yeah, very, very solid. Like I said, 4.5 stars. I definitely would recommend this series as a whole. Next up, we have The Weight of Blood by Tiffany D. Jackson. This is Tiffany D. Jackson's most recent release, and I would say this is more of a YA horror novel, definitely thrillery as well. It's basically a reimagining of Carrie by Stephen King, but we have our main character Maddie, who has been passing as white her whole life. She lives in this really backwards rural town in Georgia. They still have segregated proms, and it's 2014. And I did recently do some research of my own, and apparently these segregated proms like kind of still happen in some very rural towns. I saw specifically in Georgia, which makes sense for the setting of this book. She has been passing white. She has a white father, and her mother, I believe, died in childbirth, or so she believes, or so she was told. But her father is like fucking psychotic. He is psychotic. He loves everything about the 1950s, including beliefs about race and things like that. And he truly tries to make his daughter Maddie into the epitome of what a woman should be basically in the 1950s. But there are a few content warnings in this that I want to bring up before the rest of my discussion. But we have mental and physical abuse from Maddie's father, and we also have some pretty severe bullying. I mean, this is a reimagining of Carrie after all, right? There is also use of the N-word. I wanted to throw that out there as well. And probably other things that I'm forgetting about. But this is, at the end of the day, a horror novel. Things get dark and very gritty for sure. But yeah, basically there is this event where people are bullying Maddie. Basically it rains, and so her hair goes back to its natural texture, and so people realize that she actually is black, and so they're like making fun of her, and she realizes that she has telepathic abilities. Things get really weird, and so yeah, things go on from there. There's also a really cool podcast element to this that I really loved. Basically, there is this podcast that is chronicling all of the events that led up to prom night. You know, if you know the story of Carrie, you know kind of what I'm talking about. And so they're interviewing people that were there and talking about people that passed away because of what happened on prom night. So overall, I think I gave this 4.5 stars. I loved this book for the most part. Like, Tiffany D. Jackson can write like no other, and I truly think she is really upping her writing game in terms of her horror writing in particular, because this is only her second like true horror novel. She came out with White Smoke last year, and I gave that book 4 stars. I thought that was very solid, but this book to me was so much better in a lot of ways. The pacing was really excellent for most of the book. The reason why I didn't give this 5 stars was that for me, the last 30% or so kind of lost a bit of steam. I feel like the actual event of prom night, once we finally got there, I feel like it didn't quite live up to the build-up before. Does that make sense? But I still think that there are excellent discussions brought up. I learned so much about the history of things like segregated proms, and I learned quite a bit more about sundown towns, you know, things like that. I would definitely recommend checking out Own Voices reviews if you want that perspective, and I highly recommend that you do so. But yeah, this was for the most part very well done. I love what she did with the Carrie story. There's some really cool things going on in this book, and I definitely recommend it, especially for spooky season. Next up, we have The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston. This, you could consider this to be like a ghost romance. It also reads a lot like just a contemporary fiction novel. I don't think I would personally call this just a romance novel. I think there's a lot more going on with the story, but we are centering around Florence, who is a ghostwriter for a very, very popular romance author. But she's finding it very difficult to finish the book that she's currently working on because she kind of recently got dumped with someone that she was like head over heels in love with, and there's a lot that goes into their breakup that gets explored throughout the book. But she has a new editor whose name is Benji, who is the hero of our story, and Benji is just really pushing Florence to get this book finished because in publishing, you know, they're trying to stay on a release schedule and all of that. And so she ends up going back home to her hometown. She's been living in New York City because her father passes away. And so now her and her family are preparing for his funeral, but lo and behold, Benji shows up one day and he is a ghost. So he is now deceased. And things just go on from there. I gave this 4 stars. I definitely expected to love this book so much more than I did. But here's my main gripe with this book. I feel like Florence and Benji's romance was not enough of the focus. You know, a lot of this story focuses on Florence and her family and what has gone down in her hometown. There's a lot of discussion about, you know, how Florence has always been able to see ghosts, and I think her father was the same way. There's just like a lot of other things going on story-wise, and so sometimes the romance took a back seat, and because of that, it wasn't developed quite enough. And so sometimes I was really rooting for this romance, you know, this ghost romance, and, you know, there's definitely a forbidden element given that they can't even touch. But then honestly, by the end, I found myself feeling a bit indifferent about Benji and Florence. I feel like I said, you know, the romance was overshadowed, but I also feel like Benji's character was overshadowed too. Like, I feel like he could have been developed more. I wanted something more from their romance that I wasn't given. So I did still really enjoy it. I think that there's some beautiful writing in this throughout. I also like the discussions about the publishing industry and about things like ghostwriting and like the romance genre and things like that. So also a very unique story. I mean, I would recommend it because quite a few of my friends did love this and give this 5 stars, but unfortunately I didn't love it as much as I wanted to. Next, I have a few volumes of manga that I want to discuss briefly. I read volume 4 of An Incurable Case of Love. This is a grumpy sunshine romance between a nurse and a doctor. The doctor is the grump, the nurse is the sunshiny character. And so this is a pretty short manga series. It's only 7 volumes, and so I'm trying to just go ahead and finish the series in September, basically. So I have 3 volumes left, and I'm enjoying this series for the most part. I will say volume 4, we finally got some smut, you know, some steamy scenes. Always happy to see that. I don't like absolutely love this series just because sometimes like the hero can be a real asshole. Like, he's not cruel or anything, but sometimes like I don't love the way that he talks to the heroine sometimes. I don't know, but I am still enjoying it for what it is. I've been giving every volume 4 stars so far, and this one is no exception. Then I read volume 2 of Yonah of the Dawn. This is a historical fantasy romance kind of series, definitely more YA. And this is also a very long running series. There's 36, I think maybe almost 37 volumes out so far, and the series is not complete yet. So there is a slow burn romance going on between Yonah, our main character, and Hawk, who is her bodyguard. But I mean, obviously that's going to be a very slow burn romance given how long the series is. But I am happy to report that we do get some, you know, decent romantic tension between these 2 characters just in the first 2 volumes alone, which is really cool to see. So we have Yonah. She is the princess of this kingdom, but her father, who was the king, gets brutally assassinated. She sees who did it, and so that person is now basically after her, and so Hawk takes her away from the palace. And so now they're basically on the run. They're trying to survive. And so I really liked the developments that we see in volume 2. I really liked especially Yonah's character growth. We're already seeing that she can be quite brave when she wants to be in the face of adversity, and that was just really cool to see. Like, there were some like truly epic moments with her, and a crazy cliffhanger for sure at the end of this volume. And I love the setting of this story, and I just really like the characters and the story in general. So I would definitely recommend it. I gave this volume 4.5 stars, and I also gave volume 1 4.5 stars when I read that last month. And then I have volume 3 of Cherry Magic. So this is an MM romance between Adachi, our main character. When he turns 30, he is still a virgin, and so he has this power now that if he touches someone or like bumps into them, you know, makes any kind of contact, he can read their mind. And so this is an office romance. He bumps into his coworker Kurosawa, and he realizes that his coworker has a huge crush on him, and so that is the premise of the series. I liked volume 3 for the most part, but I still think volume 1 was absolutely the best volume so far. I have pretty high hopes for volume 4 though, just because of the way that this volume ended. I really don't have much to say about this series, but I have been enjoying it for sure. And then the very last book I have to talk about is Eyes on Me by Sarah Kate. I just finished the audiobook for this like 20 minutes ago as I was getting ready to film today, and this is book 2 in her Salacious Players Club series. This is a very exclusive sex club, basically. And so there's 4 books of this series, I believe, and each book centers around a different owner of the club. And so this one centers around Garrett and Mia. They are step siblings. There is also a significant age difference between the two of them. I believe Garrett is 36 and Mia is 23. Mia is also a cam girl, so she's a sex worker. And so I know that step sibling romances can rub people the wrong way, and I understand that, but what I will say is that in this case, they didn't grow up together. Like, I believe Mia came into Garrett's life when she may have been like 8 or 10 years old or something, and they weren't like living together as a family by that point, because I think he was already in his early 20s. So they've kind of lived separate lives from each other, but basically Garrett discovers that Mia's a cam girl and he is just like obsessed with her. He's definitely a voyeur and she's definitely an exhibitionist, so that's one of the reasons why they're such a good match for each other. But yeah, basically romantic feelings start forming between the two of them, and you know, this is definitely an erotic romance series, so there's plenty of spicy scenes to go around. I think I gave this maybe like 4.5 stars. You know, I just finished it 20 minutes ago, like I said, so I don't have like a concrete rating in my mind, but I think I'm gonna go with 4.5 stars. I personally enjoyed this one more than Praise, even though I know that Praise is the fan favorite of this series, but this one just really worked for me. I think I really enjoy step sibling romances. We're not gonna explore that. But yeah, I really like the premise. There's some really hot sex scenes in this. This one was just very solid for me. So that's going to be it for my mid-September reading wrap up. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I would love it if you would leave a comment down below if you want to discuss any of the books that I brought up in this video, or if you want to give me recommendations, anything like that. And I would also love it if you would leave a like and subscribe. And I thank you so much in advance if you do. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!